today we're going to begin our series predicting the NFL free agency, as I believe the new league year is March 14th, if I'm not mistaken, which is about a month away. So we're going to, on top of mock drafts, every video we'll do a couple positions and break down some of the top free agents and where I personally think they will sign. These are just my predictions. They probably won't be right. But in the comment section, let me know some of your predictions, and I'll personally reply my opinions on some of your predictions as well. But without further ado, let's get into our quarterback and running back free agency predictions. First running back on the free agents is Rico Dowdle, Cowboys running back. Now, a lot of people think the Cowboys could end up drafting a guy like Ashton Jeanty in the first round if he falls to them. And I feel like they could still very likely sign a running back even if they draft Jeanty, just to have like a veteran guy and not make Jeanty the workhorse. But I do think they will let Rico Dowdle walk. I feel like maybe he'll want more money than they're willing to spend on a younger guy. I think they might lean more towards the veteran running back with a rookie. So I do think Rico Dowdle will leave. Now, where does he go? There's not much validity to this, but I'm going to have him go, in my predictions, to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, there is a Pittsburgh Steelers running back later on this list, so this could reveal something about where I think he will go. But I think Rico Dowdle teams up with Jaylen Warren in Pittsburgh. I think they get a little younger at that running back position with potentially a guy like the young quarterback, maybe like Fields, or a veteran guy like Russell Wilson. But he can be that Najee Harris replacement in Pittsburgh. Next is Kareem Hunt from the Chiefs. Now, I know he didn't do very good in the Super Bowl, but none of that team outside of, I guess, Xavier Worthy did well in that Super Bowl offensively. But I do think that Kareem Hunt belongs to or like he just is a Chief to me. He drafted by the Chiefs, had a great rookie season, then the whole incident, then he went to the Browns, and then he's back on the Chiefs, and he seems like to be really happy on the Chiefs. The Chiefs seem to really like Kareem Hunt. So I do think he ends up returning to the Chiefs on a cheap deal, 1 year, maybe 2-year deal to stay with Kansas City. Next, running back is Nick Chubb from the Browns, coming off a lot of injuries, and I think I've seen reports that this could be the end for Nick Chubb on the Browns, and I do think they will move on from him just because of his injury history that he's had, and with them having a lot of stuff to address potentially with the whole Myles Garrett trade request, with what they're going to do at quarterback. I do think they move on from a guy like Nick Chubb. And a team that was mentioned earlier that I think could potentially bring in a veteran guy to pair alongside a rookie they draft is the Dallas Cowboys. I can't picture Nick Chubb in a Cowboys jersey, but I don't hate this signing. He can be that veteran with a guy they draft. So not only does potentially a rookie like Jeanty not have to be the workhorse, but Nick Chubb also doesn't have to be the workhorse, because you have him with a young rookie. So Chubb isn't doing all the work. The rookie isn't doing all the work. And I think he could be a good mentor to a young rookie running back. Next is Javonte Williams from the Broncos. With the absence of Nick Chubb, I know they have Jerome Ford, but I could see the Browns, if they do indeed move on from Nick Chubb, I could see them getting his replacement in free agency, whether that's one of the top guys or someone else. I do like them to fill that spot. I don't think they're just going to keep Jerome Ford as their only halfback. So I'm going to put Javonte Williams on the Browns to be that Nick Chubb replacement. Just a good, solid running back. Pair him alongside Jerome Ford. I don't think he'll be asking for a ton of money, so you can get him for a relatively cheap deal, I believe. J.K. Dobbins from the Chargers came over from the Ravens in the most recent free agency, and he had a good season. Him and Gus Edwards in that run game, Greg Roman, they played pretty well. And I think that they had enough success, and I think he fits the scheme. Obviously, he was with Greg Roman and the Ravens. So I do think they bring him back. I think it worked all too well just to have it only be a 1-year thing. I think they're going to invest more of their money and draft capital and all that stuff on receivers and tight ends and maybe even some edge rushers or D-line guys that I think they'll just be okay bringing back J.K. Dobbins on a okay team-friendly deal to bring him back. Next is Najee Harris. Now, Pittsburgh did sign Rico Dowdle, so that means that I don't think they will be bringing Najee Harris back. I think a lot of signs have pointed to him leaving Pittsburgh. And where do I think he'll end up now, though, if it is not Pittsburgh? Because we don't know what they're going to do with the quarterbacks. It seems like they're going to choose one of Fields or Russell Wilson, even though they could probably still just get rid of both. But I do think they're going to want to bring in, I do think they're going to let Najee go. And a team that could bring interested, I think, is the Las Vegas Raiders. They don't have much in the running game. They tried guys like, I can't even remember. Zamir White. They had like the rotation of like Zamir White and Alexander Madison, Amir Abdullah, and it just didn't really work out in Las Vegas. Bigger market. I think they have some money. I wouldn't be surprised if they go after a big time guy like Najee Harris. They could be interested in the quarterback free agency market as well, as both the top two quarterbacks in Shedeur and Ward could be off the board by the time the Raiders pick, which I believe is at 6. So they could be interested in the free agency quarterback market as well. And why not pair that new quarterback along with a very good running back in Najee Harris, who kind of was trending downwards recently, but he had a very good season last year in Pittsburgh, kind of reemerged as a top running back. So I like the Raiders to pair their new quarterback with a guy like Najee Harris. Last running back on this list in this video is Aaron Jones. Signed a 1-year deal to go to the Vikings. And the first half of the season for Aaron Jones was great. And then he didn't have a bad second half of the season. He just wasn't like a top guy like he was at the beginning. But he still had a great season. And still one of the top premier running backs in the league. I think it just makes perfect sense for the Vikings to bring him back, especially if you're going to let Sam Darnold go. That frees up money you have to spend at the quarterback position if you stick with McCarthy, and that can allow you to pay a guy like Aaron Jones, who had too much success for I think for them to let him leave. So I do think Aaron Jones re-signs with the Vikings. Now moving on to the quarterbacks. There's not many, because the quarterback market, at least as of now, isn't very deep. Trades could happen, trade rumors, whatever. Guys could get cut. But for now, the free agent market isn't very full here. First guy, though, is Jameis Winston, quarterback for the Browns. Now, Deshaun Watson is out, I believe, again. So I could see the Browns bringing back Jameis, whether he's the quarterback or he's competing with a guy like Ward or Sanders. But they might not even draft a quarterback. And I do think they're going to move on from Jameis. I think Jameis is going to move to his next team. But I do think he moves to a familiar team. And I think he goes back to New Orleans. When he was doing all his press stuff for Fox or whatever for the Super Bowl, the Super Bowl was in New Orleans. And every time someone would ask him, or he'd ask somebody where he wants to be, he said he wants to be back in New Orleans because he really likes the city. The fans really like him. They don't have much at quarterback, so I really like Jameis going back to New Orleans. Seems like there's I don't know about mutual interest in signing him, but mutual interest in he likes New Orleans, New Orleans likes him. So I like that fit of bringing him back there. Next up is Russell Wilson. Now, as we mentioned before, Pittsburgh has Russ and Fields both expiring. it seems like they are going to move on from at least one, potentially two. I'm going to have them only move on from one. But Russell Wilson does not seem like that quarterback that they will bring back. It seems like Russ is going to leave, and it's just whether they keep Fields or not. And I do think Russell Wilson will leave. Now, where does he go, though, is the question, obviously. He could go to a team that could draft a quarterback like the Titans, or I guess the Browns, or the Giants, the Raiders, or he could go to a team like the Jets, who probably isn't going to draft a quarterback, and he can just try and just play for the Jets. I think he goes to not the New York Jets. I think he goes to the New York Giants. Whether they draft a quarterback or not, I really like Russell Wilson to the Giants. Big market. He can play there for a year or two. If they draft a quarterback, he can be the guy so the quarterback doesn't have to start right away. He could just be a veteran backup for that quarterback. Or if they don't draft a guy because both quarterbacks are off the board or they don't like either of the two quarterbacks, you can just start Russ. He can get the ball to Malik Neighbors and maybe other weapons you add. And as I mentioned before, that brings us to Justin Fields, who I do have returning to Pittsburgh. They could get rid of him and Russell Wilson, but I do think they'll keep one, or I think they'll keep one. And it seems like if they were to keep one, it would be Fields. He had the great start to the season, and then they put Russell Wilson in when he was healthy, and then Russ sort of elevated the team even further, but then sort of faded back down towards the end of the season and then the playoffs. And I think Fields gives you that upside, maybe a higher potential than Russell Wilson. Will Fields ever develop into a very elite passer? Who knows? But he'll always give you that rushing threat, and you don't have to commit to him if you're Pittsburgh. This could be a 1-2 year type thing, and maybe you draft a quarterback. But I do think that Pittsburgh will keep Fields if they keep one of him or Russ. Last quarterback, at least that I have originally, I will talk about two more before we finish this. It's Sam Darnold, the top free agent quarterback, one of the top free agents on the entire market. Had a very up and down career. Then he goes to Minnesota for this 1-year deal, and he plays like a top 10 MVP candidate for most of the season. But just like Russell Wilson, kind of, he sort of fell off a little bit towards the end of the season and in the playoffs. And I think that heavily tanked his value. Still think he'll get paid because you can't deny the season he did have. If you have a roster around him, if you have coaching, he can play well. Now, will he sign with a team that has a good roster? I'm not sure. But I do think he will leave Minnesota. And I do think Minnesota will stick with McCarthy. And a team that could use a veteran guy that maybe is out of the top tier or the top spots for these rookie quarterbacks is the Las Vegas Raiders. I mentioned before, the Raiders might not have the team needed for Sam Darnold. And if this happens, it might not go over great because Sam Darnold isn't in that very good situation. But I think the Raiders will be willing to spend money on a quarterback. They could go after a guy like Russ. They could go after a guy like Fields. I guess, or even Jameis. Or they could obviously, one of the quarterbacks in the draft could fall to them. But I just think, I think Sam Darnold's going to get paid. May not be as much as he would have if it wasn't for those last 4 or 5 weeks. But I think he's going to get paid. I don't think it'll be by Minnesota. And I like the Raiders to spend that money on him. As I mentioned, there's two other quarterbacks that aren't on here because they're not technically official free agents. Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers. I do think Aaron Rodgers will end up retiring. I think there's not much he needs to do. He's done all there is to do as an NFL player, winning Super Bowls, winning MVPs. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He doesn't have to prove anything to anybody. I don't know where he'd go. It's not the Jets. We know that. So, and he can't go back to the Packers because they got Love. I just don't see a fit for Rodgers, so I think he will end up retiring, especially with all the injuries he's dealt with over the last 2 years. I think it'd just be best for him to retire. That's just my prediction. And then with Kirk Cousins is an interesting one because he's not going back to the Falcons. In my predictions, he probably isn't going to the Saints or the Giants or the Raiders. Kirk Cousins could go to a team like the Jets. I could see that happening. I could see him maybe going to a team like the Titans, who draft a rookie quarterback. And, I mean, you could have Kirk start. You could have the rookie quarterback start. And you know what? My prediction for, as I said, for Aaron Rodgers is that he retires. And I think his spot gets taken by Kirk Cousins. And I think Cousins signs with the Jets. That will, and with that, that'll conclude our running back and quarterback free agency predictions. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, comment down below some of your predictions, some of your thoughts, and also subscribe and leave a comment saying that you subscribed, and I'll personally reply to your comment as well as your comments giving your thoughts and opinions on these predictions and on these free agents. More videos predicting the rest of the free agents will come out over the course of the next month as we get ready for free agency, as well as of course draft related videos as well. And I'll make sure to and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.